ready to take your relationships to the next level.
Let's do it.
Today, we're diving deep into strengthening relationships, communication, appreciation, and romance.
Ooh.
It's packed with insights, and we've got 6 practical strategies to unpack.
I'm ready.
So one thing that stood out to me is, you know how we always say communication is key? Well, this source makes a great point.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes we talk at each other, not with each other.
Right.
We're not really communicating, just going through the motions.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever felt that way?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think we've all been there at some point.
It's so easy to fall into that trap.
Especially in long-term relationships.
Right. So that's where this whole idea of active listening comes in.
Okay.
And the source really breaks it down. Like, it's about going beyond just hearing the words.
Yeah.
Really tuning into what your partner's trying to say.
It's about understanding their perspective and their emotions.
Yeah, even when you don't necessarily agree.
Exactly.
So how do we actually do that?
Well, the source has some practical techniques, and one that I found really helpful is validating your partner's emotions.
Validating their emotions.
Yeah. So let's say they're stressed about a work deadline, right?
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, come on, it's just a deadline.
I've been there.
Instead of brushing it off, you could say something like, wow, it sounds like you've got a lot on your plate right now.
Mm-hmm.
That must be really overwhelming.
Okay, I see. But what if you genuinely disagree with the source of their frustration?
That's a good point.
Like maybe you think they're overreacting.
Sure.
How do you validate their feelings then?
Even then, you can still acknowledge how they're feeling
Okay.
without necessarily agreeing with their viewpoint, right?
Right.
You can still create that safe space for them to share. So you might say, I hear that you're really stressed about this deadline. Help me understand why it feels so overwhelming.
Oh, that's a great example. So you're not dismissing their feelings,
Yeah.
but you're also opening up a conversation.
Exactly.
I like that. And the source also talks about the power of nonverbal communication.
Right.
Have you ever heard of the 10-minute eye contact challenge?
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I've never actually tried it.
It sounds a little out there, I know.
Yeah.
But basically, you just sit facing each other and hold eye contact for 10 minutes straight.
Wow.
No talking, no phones.
Just eye contact.
Yep, it can be pretty intense.
I bet.
But it's amazing how much you can communicate without words.
I can imagine.
It's like you're really seeing and being seen by your partner.
I might have to try that.
You should. It's a great way to reconnect, especially in today's world where there are so many distractions.
So true.
Okay, so we've talked about communication.
Yeah.
The source also dives into this really important aspect of relationships.
Yeah.
Appreciation.
Okay. Yeah.
It's so easy to take our partners for granted.
Especially in long-term relationships.
Exactly. Like we get so caught up in the day-to-day that we forget to express those little acts of appreciation.
Yeah. And the source makes a great point that gratitude can be a real game changer.
A game changer, totally.
Like even simple things, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Like saying thank you more often.
Yeah. For all the things your partner does, big and small.
Even something as basic as taking out the trash, right?
Exactly. It's about acknowledging their efforts.
Right, because we do these things all the time for each other without really thinking about it.
Right.
But that thank you can really make a difference.
It shows that you notice and you appreciate it.
And don't forget about surprises.
Oh, yeah, those are always fun.
A little handwritten note, a cup of coffee in bed, even a random hug.
It's those little things that can make your partner feel so loved.
Okay, so I have to ask you about this one challenge from the source.
Okay, hit me.
The 3 compliments a day challenge. Have you heard of this?
I have. It sounds a bit cheesy, but I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, it might feel a little forced at first.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of making expressing appreciation a conscious habit.
Right. It's like you're training your brain to focus on the positive.
Exactly. It's so easy to get caught up in the negative or just the routine.
Totally.
Okay, speaking of routines, I'm curious about what the source has to say about quality time.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because in today's world, right, everyone's so busy,
Yeah.
constantly connected.
Always on the go.
So how do we even find time for quality time?
Well, the source talks about this idea of being present, not just together.
Ooh, I like that. Present, not just together.
It's like you can be in the same room with your partner, but if you're both on your phones,
Right.
are you really connecting?
You're just physically there, but not mentally or emotionally.
Exactly.
So how do we actually become more present?
Well, the source suggests creating what they call tech-free zones.
Tech-free zones.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
So it's about setting boundaries around technology,
Okay.
like maybe no phones during dinner,
I like that.
or an hour before bed is screen-free time.
That's a good one.
It's about consciously choosing to disconnect from the digital world and reconnect with each other.
It's so easy to just mindlessly scroll even when you're with people you care about.
Right.
And the source also emphasizes date nights.
Date nights are important.
I know it can seem like, ugh, who has the time?
But it doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Yeah, exactly. It's about setting aside that dedicated time for just the two of you.
Away from distractions.
And it can be as simple as cooking dinner together, going for a walk, playing a game.
Whatever you both enjoy.
Okay, so we've got communication, appreciation, quality time, and I'm sensing a theme here.
What's that?
All these strategies, they all seem to build on each other.
You're right. They're all interconnected.
Right, like you can't have one without the other.
It's like a foundation for a strong relationship.
Okay, but relationships aren't always smooth sailing.
True.
Let's be real, disagreements happen.
They're inevitable.
So what does the source say about handling conflict constructively?
Well, first of all, it normalizes arguments.
Normalizes arguments.
Yeah, like it acknowledges that they're not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
In fact, they can be an opportunity for growth.
If they're handled the right way.
Right.
So many couples fear conflict.
Yeah, they see it as a sign that something's wrong.
But the source offers a different perspective.
It's about shifting your language from blame to expressing feelings.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
So instead of saying, you always leave your clothes on the floor,
Which, let's be honest, I've definitely said that before.
it comes across as an attack.
It does.
The source suggests framing it differently,
Okay.
focusing on how your partner's actions make you feel.
So you might say something like, I feel frustrated when I see clothes on the floor because it makes me feel like our space is cluttered.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's about owning your feelings without attacking your partner,
Right, and it invites your partner to understand your perspective.
rather than immediately getting defensive.
Exactly.
I like that. So we've got communication, appreciation, quality time conflict. What's next?
Well, this next one's especially important for those in long-term relationships.
Okay, lay it on me.
Keeping the romance alive.
Ah, yes, the eternal struggle.
Right. It's so easy for routine and responsibilities to take over.
So how do we keep that spark from fading?
The source emphasizes that it takes consistent effort,
Even in long-term relationships.
especially in long-term relationships.
Okay, I'm ready for some tips.
Well, one simple but effective one is sending flirty texts throughout the day.
Oh, I like that.
Just a little message to let your partner know you're thinking about them.
Yeah, and little surprises can be a game changer too.
Totally, like bringing your partner breakfast in bed, leaving a handwritten note,
It's those unexpected gestures that show you care.
and you're willing to put in the effort.
Speaking of effort, the source mentions this love jar thing.
The love jar.
Have you heard of this?
I haven't.
Basically, you each write down fun or romantic activities you'd like to do together.
Okay.
Put them in a jar.
Okay.
Then once a week, you pick an activity at random and do it.
Oh, that's a fun idea.
It takes the pressure off having to come up with new date ideas all the time.
And it adds that element of surprise.
Exactly. Okay, we've covered a lot. Communication, appreciation, quality time, conflict resolution, and keeping the romance alive.
That's a lot.
That's 5 strategies. What's the final one?
And this last one ties back to what we were talking about with appreciation.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's all about understanding and appreciating your partner's love language.
The love languages. This is a classic
It's so helpful.
for understanding how we give and receive love differently.
Exactly. And the source really emphasizes that knowing your partner's love language is essential for a healthy relationship.
Okay, so for those who might not be familiar,
Yeah.
can you give us a quick recap of the 5 love languages?
Of course. So we have words of affirmation,
Okay,
acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch.
so it's about recognizing that what makes one person feel loved might not do it for another.
Exactly. You got to speak the right language.
I love that analogy, speaking the right language.
So let's say your partner's love language is acts of service,
Okay,
but you tend to express love through words of affirmation.
so you might be showering them with compliments,
Right.
but they would actually feel more loved if you helped them with chores
Exactly.
or tackled a project they've been putting off.
It's about aligning your actions with their needs.
And of course, it works both ways.
Right.
You need to communicate your own love language too.
It's a two-way street.
We've covered so much today.
We have.
What stood out to you the most?
I think what's fascinating is how interconnected all these strategies are.
Yeah, they're not isolated concepts.
They all work together to create a strong and healthy relationship.
It's like a web, right?
Exactly. You can't really have one without the other.
And what I appreciate about this source is that it doesn't overcomplicate things.
It's very straightforward.
Actionable advice.
Anyone can apply it.
So it's not about grand gestures. It's about those consistent everyday actions. Like taking a few minutes to truly listen.
Or expressing gratitude.
Even for the mundane stuff.
It's about being intentional.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive.
I agree.
I'm already thinking about how I can apply some of these things in my own life.
Me too.
So before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
I love a good challenge.
Pick just one strategy from this part
Okay.
and try it out this week.
Just one.
Just one to start.
I can do that.
What will you choose?
I think I'm going to try those tech-free zones.
That's a great one.
I catch myself on my phone way too much.
Me too.
Even when I'm with people I care about.
It's so easy to do.
But I'm committed to being more present.
I love that. What about you? You know what? I'm going to join you on that tech-free zone challenge.
Yes, let's do it.
Accountability, buddy.
I like it.
So for all of you listening, what strategy will you choose?
Yeah, think about it.
Even the smallest changes can make a world of difference.
Absolutely.
And now, before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, we have one final gem to share from the source.
Ooh, there's more.
This source just keeps on giving.
I'm all ears. Okay, so this last one, it's interesting. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about with appreciation.
Oh, I'm sensing a theme here. It's like all these strategies kind of build on each other.
It's all about those consistent actions that show your partner, love, that you care.
Yeah.
But this adds another layer, and it's about understanding your partner's love language.
The love languages. I love this. This is such a classic, really helpful framework
Absolutely.
for understanding how we give and receive love differently.
Yeah, and the source really emphasizes this, knowing your partner's love language, it's essential for a healthy relationship.
Okay, so I'm curious, do you find that couples often have conflicting love languages?
All the time. Like one person might be all about words of affirmation. Right.
And the other one's like acts of service all the way.
Yeah.
And that's where things can get a little tricky.
Yeah, because you might be showing love in a way that feels genuine to you, but it's not really landing with your partner.
Exactly. And the source has some good points about how to bridge that gap.
Okay, so for those who might not be super familiar with this whole love language thing, can we do a quick recap?
Sure. So the 5 love languages, we've got words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch.
So each one represents a different way people feel loved and valued.
Yep.
So someone whose love language is words of affirmation, they need to hear it.
Yes, absolutely. Like compliments, words of encouragement, verbal reminders of love.
Those are the things that make them feel seen.
Exactly.
While someone who's all about acts of service, they're like, don't just tell me you love me, do the dishes.
Right. It's about those actions, those helpful gestures.
Showing you care, not just saying it.
And then receiving gifts.
Yeah.
That's another one. It's not about being materialistic. It's about the thought.
Yeah, the thoughtfulness behind it.
That makes them feel special.
Right.
Quality time, that's a big one for some people.
Yeah, it's about those moments of focused connection.
No distractions.
Just being present with each other.
And last but not least, physical touch.
Hugs, kisses, cuddles.
All the good stuff.
It's a way of expressing love and affection through physical closeness.
Okay, so understanding these different love languages, it's huge.
Yeah, it can make a big difference in your relationship.
It's like you said before, speaking the right language.
Exactly. You got to know how to communicate your love in a way that your partner understands.
So give me an example. How does this work in practice?
Okay, let's say your partner's love language is acts of service, but yours is words of affirmation.
So you're all about the compliments.
Right.
But they really just want you to help around the house.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that even though you're expressing love in a way that feels genuine to you.
You might not be land.
Right, it's not what they need.
So you got to switch it up.
Adapt, speak their language.
And it goes both ways too, right?
Absolutely, you need to communicate your own love language to your partner.
It's a two-way street.
Make sure you're both on the same page.
We've covered so much: communication, appreciation, quality time, conflict resolution, keeping the romance alive, and now, love languages.
What a journey.
What stood out to you most from all of this?
I think it's amazing how interconnected all these strategies are.
Yeah, they're not separate things.
They work together, like a puzzle.
It's all part of the big picture of building a healthy relationship.
And what's great about this source is that it's all very practical advice.
Yeah, it's not some abstract theory.
Real world stuff that you can actually use.
So it's not about these huge sweeping changes.
Right.
It's about those small, consistent actions. Just taking a few minutes to listen, expressing gratitude, even for the little things.
It all adds up.
This has been so insightful. I'm definitely taking notes.
Me too.
So before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
Okay, hit me.
Pick one strategy that really spoke to you from this part
All right.
and try it out this week.
I like it. Focus on one thing.
Yeah. What will you choose?
I think I'm going to try to be more mindful of my partner's love language.
That's a great one.
Sometimes I get so caught up in my own way of expressing love that I forget to think about what really resonates with them.
It's easy to do.
But I want to make sure I'm speaking their language, you know?
I love that way. What about you? What are you going to focus on? You know what? I'm going to try that love jar thing.
Oh, that's a fun one.
I think it'll be a good way to inject some spontaneity and fun into our relationship.
Keep things fresh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, for all you listening, what strategy will you choose?
Yeah, what's going to be your one thing?
Remember, even those small changes can have a big impact.
You really care.
And now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, there's one last thing I wanted to share from the source.
Okay, lay it on me. It's something we haven't really touched on directly,
Yeah, okay.
but it's this idea of individual growth within the relationship.
Ooh, so it's not just about how we interact with each other,
Right.
but also how we're growing as individuals.
Exactly. The source really emphasizes this, like personal growth.
Yeah,
It's actually essential
that's
for a
Sessler.
thriving relationship.
I like that.
When you're constantly learning, expanding your horizons, pursuing your passions, it brings this vibrancy to the relationship.
You're not stagnant, you're evolving.
Right.
And
Yep.
that can be really attractive to your partner.
Absolutely. It's like you're bringing fresh perspectives, new energy.
Keeps things interesting.
And the source even suggests that, supporting each other's growth
Yeah.
can actually strengthen the bond between you.
Oh, I like that. So it's not about two people becoming completely enmeshed.
Right.
It's about two individuals growing together while also maintaining their own identities and passions.
You said it perfectly. And, this whole idea of individual growth, it wasn't explicitly mentioned in those 6 strategies we talked about.
Right.
But I think it's like this underlying theme.
Yeah, like the secret ingredient.
Exactly.
Because if you're not growing as an individual, it's hard to really engage in those positive relationship habits we've been talking about.
So true. You need that foundation of personal growth.
To really thrive in a relationship.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. What are we each doing to nurture our own personal growth?
Yeah. And how are we supporting our partner's growth?
Those are great questions for all of us to consider.
Because ultimately, relationships, they're a journey of growth, both individually and together.
This deep dive has been so eye-opening.
I agree.
So much good stuff to think about.
It's really made me reflect on my own relationships.
Me too. And, I feel like we've really uncovered a treasure trove of wisdom here.
Yeah,
Practical advice for building stronger and more fulfilling relationships.
for sure.
I'm so glad we took this deep dive together.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners out there, we hope you feel inspired
And equipped.
to start putting some of these ideas into practice.
Remember, even small changes can make a big difference.
Well, on that note, it's time for us to wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep those relationships strong.
See you next time.